French President Emmanuel Macron is in Beijing this week. It is his first trip to China in 3.5 years, and over the coming days, he will hold around 10 hours of face-to-face talks with the President Xi Jinping, focused in particular on trade and the war in Ukraine. Indeed, speaking a short while ago today, Macron said China could play a major role in finding peace.
The war led by Russia in Ukraine has profoundly affected the international order as we've known it since 1945. And this war, which I've repeatedly described as imperialist and colonial, has violated many of the principles of the United Nations Charter, which, as two permanent members of the Security Council, we must resolutely defend. So China, precisely because of its close relationship with Russia, which has been reaffirmed in recent days, can play a major role.
Well, our China correspondent Yenna Li is covering the state visit, and she joins us live now from Beijing. Yenna, diplomatically then, this trip clearly is something of a balancing act for the French president. Just lay out the stakes for us and what it is that Macron's hoping to achieve.
Well, the war in Ukraine is clearly at the top of his agenda. He has been speaking to a group of journalists a little earlier, and he told us that it's a Russian point of view to say that this war is all about the West versus the rest. He says that he's here to talk and to negotiate with his Chinese counterparts, and he said that China had an important role to play because of its closeness and proximity to Moscow. He also even had positive things to say about China's 12-point position paper that it released a few weeks ago. He called it a peace plan, and he said that there were several areas of collaboration that were possible with France, with China. He also insisted on China's role in non-proliferation. Paris is perhaps hoping and seeking a stronger condemnation or stronger words from China against the Kremlin's threats to place nuclear weapons in Belarus. Emmanuel Macron also said, I quote, "I'm not naive. I'm not here thinking that France and China can somehow suddenly bring peace to Ukraine, but that he is here to think about long-term peace objectives and goals." He's also here, of course, for trade reasons. France and China trade immensely. He wants to deepen those ties, and he wants to improve France's massive trade deficit with China. It will be, though, a rather tough balancing act to increase business deals with this business delegation he has brought along with him, all the while insisting on the importance of de-risking France and Europe's economy.
Yeah, no, so that's what Macron is hoping to achieve in the next couple of days. What about the Chinese leader Xi Jinping? What would success on this state visit look like for him?
Well, China is in a rather interesting position. It has just reopened its borders after 3 years of zero COVID policy, and its economy in a very good shape. The economy was sluggish even before the COVID crisis. Last year, it had a 3% growth rate. This year, estimates of around 5%. Probably it will be a little bit less. And then there are all these tensions with the United States, threats of sanctions, of decoupling. And, you know, China really needs to find other partners other than the United States, economic partners to do more deals with. This is also an occasion for Beijing for it to return on the international stage after that COVID crisis. For Emmanuel Macron, he has now become one of many visitors to come to Beijing and meet with President Xi Jinping. He's to meet him on Thursday. There was Pedro Sanchez, there was Singapore's Lee Hsien Loong. President Lula of Brazil was supposed to come but cancelled because he was sick, but he is to come later on. Beijing recently published its foreign policy vision, and China has been very vocal, for example, about its opposition to Cold War rhetoric. It really strives for a new world order where the United States would no longer be dominant. President Xi Jinping has just confirmed his unprecedented third term. He's been consolidating power within China, and now he's clearly seeking to be more vocal and more present on the international stage. We saw it with that Iran-Saudi Arabia deal that he helped to mediate. So whatever Beijing's concrete decisions are, what steps it decides to take in regards to the war in Ukraine, it is fair to say that it will be less about peace and more about putting China's own interests first.
Yenna Li, live in Beijing.